As most of you are aware by now, I recently DM'd a Ruby D&D campaign over on Bill's YouTube channel. But this wasn't the group's first D&D session with me as DM. Believe it or not, we weren't sure if we were to record D&D stuff because I wanted to try it out with the Discord at the time. This was back when all the news was breaking out and I wanted to do something to cheer some people up, so I offered the idea to play a D&D game. So I chose the Death House. This is the first adventure / dungeon of the Curse of Strahd campaign. Not only is Curse of Strahd regarded as one of the best 5e adventure books and one of the most fun ones, but I think that Death House serves as a nice example to have people try out D&D for the first time. While you can do Lost Mines of Phandelver, I wasn't sure if we should do an actual campaign like that, so I went ahead and modified the Death House for this party's experience to see if they would like it and to see if they would want to actually do the Curse of Strahd campaign. So I wanted to go over how that went in our 3 sessions that we didn't record, because after the first session we did, people wanted to continue this and they wanted to finish it, and now by the sounds of it, they want to continue on with Curse of Strahd, which is always a good thing because Curse of Strahd, as stated earlier, is a really good adventure. So sit back, relax, as I tell you the tale of how it went in the Death House. It is important to know that I, of course, as the DM, decided to make things a little more fair for the newer players, because if I did it strictly as the book says, it would have killed them all and killed their first characters, which I didn't want to do, because I wanted them to have fun and to play with the characters that they came up with. So what I went ahead and did, instead of starting the party completely at level 1, I started them all at level 5. This gave them access to not only their subclass, but also any chance to increase their stats that they may not have gotten, or learn what feats are. And if any of them gets bonus features or more spells, it just gives them more options at level 5, or extra attack from the martial classes. So I wanted to go ahead and introduce the party that we set up for this adventure. Let's start off with one that did return for the Ruby D&D campaign, Bugger, the level 5 Mountain Dwarf. Bugger's class is the Fighter. Fighters are what I consider to be the easiest class for a lot of people to play. They have a lot of great versatility with their subclasses. They can venture in magic, being a tank, doing damage at long and short range. They're a lot of fun and a good way to teach a beginner how to play. For Bugger, he was an Eldritch Knight, which is a mixture of fighting and magic damage. And this is good because at level 3, your weapons can become magical weapons, which is good for a campaign like this where some things have resistances. As well as just learning how to use your spells, as well as maybe trying to introduce them to wizards, since the Eldritch Knight goes off the wizard spellbook by our rule standards. Eldritch Knight's a good way to teach a mixture of both magic and martial damage. And I think this was a fun class and a fun character build that Bill did. Killian was a Bard of Lore Wood Elf. This was played by Fireball RKO, who is a experienced player of D&D. He wanted to play something different from his normal comfort zone, which was a rogue. And bards are pretty solid support classes with bardic inspiration. Vicious Mockery does great damage early on, as well as just being able to cast spells and do any kind of damage you need to help the party. It was cool to have a bard being here without trying to seduce everything because of the whole meme going around. Bards are a lot of fun. Up next we have Millie, played by Torok, a dragon-born draconic bloodline sorceress, which is a mouthful to say out loud, but a fun magic class in sorcerer. If you don't want to play the squishier version of wizard, sorcerer is a solid option. The only downside for a new player is all the meta magics that they get. Trying to balance those out and just pick and choose might be confusing to new players, but I think Torok overall did a well enough job to balance out Millie, as well as understand how the sorcerer class kind of works.
She's a young scholar from the esteemed University of Ashendale who has heard rumors of the mystic mists covering the land of Barovia and decided to investigate it as part of her personal end-of-the-year thesis project. So, I've never played D&D before, but I didn't want to play something too simple like a fighter or a barbarian because I really wanted to learn the intricacies of the game, so being a spellcaster, I felt like it was the right fit to do exactly that. Now, she's a red dragonborn, as you can probably see, but if you notice, the golden tips of her scales, alongside with the magic powers she was born with, they come from a gold dragon lineage. So she feels like she's been sitting between two chairs her entire life, and that's about the extent of her character so far.
Draconic Bloodline is also pretty good because it gives him extra resistance to fire damage based off his bloodline, which was a copper dragon, and with him being a red dragonborn, he was only taking a 4 fire damage, technically speaking. Speaking of fire damage, we have Sho, played by Fireball16, our Fire Genasi monk, way of the 4 elements. Originally he wanted to play a fighter, but I wanted to try to encourage the party to pick different classes to try them out, and with martial arts and fist fighting being a monk's thing and being one of Fireball's favorite fighting styles, I think a monk suited him best. And we decided to flavor up this 4 elements monk for his character's story later down the line, which is also going to be revealed assuming we still record Curse of Strahd, so I don't want to give too many details. Still, this was the party. Well-rounded with some magic damage, some martial damage, and a little bit of support. Not a lot of healing, sadly, because of how limited Killian's healing spells are, and he could use those for other spells to help him out. Still, overall, the party adventured into Barovia for their own reasons, but this main topic is mostly talking about the Death House itself. However, I will be adding notes from my party about certain aspects of the Death House, as well as just aspects about what they thought of certain characters throughout the run that we had so far. So sit back and enjoy more of the actual story of the Death House. The Death House story is kind of simple. The party is exploring and on their way to the village of Barovia to carriage ride. They have to decide where you can go up to the Haunted Mansion. This is where the party, as they were heading towards the inn in Barovia, they heard the crying noise of 2 children, one of which being Rose, and Rose pleads with the party to help save their baby brother from inside the house. Not knowing what dangers await, the party happily accept and take on this quest. The dungeon of the Death House can be a scary place, so you would think that the party should stick together, stay strong, and immediately they split up not even 10 seconds into the house.
What?
I'm not kidding. The first thing they did, after saying, we're gonna stick together, was split up into 2 separate groups. Bugger and Killian took the left side of the house, while Sho and Millie took the right side. Granted, Sho and Millie did find some loot in those crossbows, and they'd never used them, but still, good on them for finding it. As for Bugger and Killian, they really didn't find too much, so after a bit, the party met back up with each other. As they kept going exploring, they found a dumbwaiter which can be used to explore if you are small enough. And luckily, since Bugger is a mountain dwarf, he was able to climb into the dumbwaiter and go around and explore secret shortcuts of the house. While this set the party up in a group of 3, Killian the bard decided to stay back a little bit to just try to keep in contact with Bugger through sending /message, while Millie and Sho went upstairs to explore more of the house. They see a double-sided door that leads into the bedroom, which has a secret library in it. And by secret library, I mean more so a moving bookcase. This is when the party did their first encounter, the deathly encounter of animated armor. If you guys recall, I used the animated armor for the Ruby campaign, not only as a reference to this, but also to give the party a bit of redemption after fighting it. Oh boy. It went as well as you expected it to. And when I mean well, I mean no one could really damage the thing. Now, it's not necessarily the party's fault itself. The animated armor's biggest thing going for it is its high AC. In fact, out of all the encounters inside the dungeon, I'm fairly certain that it has the highest AC at 18. Which means it is going to be very hard to hit, and you want to try to hit it with saving throw spells, or saving throw attacks. Which sucks because Millie, who was the sorceress, and the long range user, was close range to the animated armor. Which is bad because not only could Millie use her spells at disadvantage really, but if she tried to break away, the animated armor would get an attack of opportunity unless Millie spent her action disengaging and just running away. After a couple rounds, Killian finally ventured upstairs and Bugger made his way out of the dumbwaiter. As he saw the open doors, he saw the armor. This is where the Eldritch Knight has that feature we were talking about with magic weapons. because the enchanted armor can resist a lot of stuff, but it doesn't resist slashing damage from magical weapons, which Bugger's weapons, like his longsword, were. So Bugger was able to get full damage whenever he wanted. Bugger was able to not only help defeat this armor pretty easily, but he also did a really funny thing. I just stomped the head of this armor because he felt like it, and just wanted to put it out of its misery. As well as just showing how creative players can be when finishing off an enemy. Visualizing this in their head and makes them feel satisfied. Eventually the party grouped up as they decided to continue further. Instead of investigating the room at first, they decided to go back into a storage closet. And inside that storage closet was another encounter, the enchanted broom. So the enchanted broom is a pretty easy encounter. It's typically, I imagine, the first encounter people run into, but in our case, it wasn't. And then Sho, the monk, decided to kick it in half. Well, I described this kick, but actually due to his signature move of sweeping Cinder Strike, he more so punched the broom in half. That's right, he broke the broom with one punch, which left the party entirely sad. But we'll get back to the room later. Eventually, the party went up to go to the attic, where they found a special doll that I decided to do something kind of interesting to try to teach the players about doing a little bit of side questing, where Killian accidentally attacked the specter of the nurse / caretaker of the group, which, according to RKO, it made Killian realize that he wants to make amends by giving the kids a proper burial, which is totally understandable because the party was able to actually talk down the specter. In the book it says you can't talk down the specter, but again, being able to teach the players that sometimes the silver tongue might work in combat, I figured it was the best case scenario. This allowed the party to interact with the children one last time, where Bugger decides to give the doll back to the children, so he got a special reward for it, teaching us that side questing is important, and also hearing the actual story that the children died a long time ago while their parents fended off whatever was deep down in the basement. Which, oh boy, we'll get to that. It was here that the party was able to get some rest, and some character development happened. For example, Sho was able to understand why he became more and more aggressive. Originally, Sho wanted to just protect those who couldn't protect themselves, but he had an alternative motive. Having a nightmare of a tragedy that happened to him gave him motivation to find the answers he needed in Barovia, giving him a little bit of character development.
I'm gonna lose you again.
Millie decided to take watch up.
But instead of watching on the group, I used my night shift to get back on the first floor and try and fix the magic broom with a mending spell. I really wanted that broom to follow me in my adventures, okay? And it must have worked better than I expected, because not only the broom did in fact consider me a friend, but it then asked me to repair the living armor guy from before, who, after I restored it, guided me to a secret room full of goodies, like a letter and a magic scabbard, also another dead person, because turns out the armor was also the spirits of an adventurer who died in this place and also never found rest. So at this point you really have to imagine a bunch of dudes walking through an abandoned house with the corpses of an adult and 2 dead kids on their shoulders, and somehow being the protagonist.
It was at this point that Killian himself saw the dollhouse during his watch, and upon inspecting it, it was actually a map of the entire death house, which is pretty handy and a clever way to hide something in plain sight. After Killian got the information he needed, he switched with Bugger, and during Bugger's shift, he stayed asleep after he found the skull, and decided to keep it as a friend / decoy. Afterwards, they went down the cellar to bury the children, and the Lost Adventure, where Millie did get her unique weapon, which was a randomly generated fun weapon, which was a halberd of dragon slaying.
But then something happened. As I laid the dead adventurer to rest, that magic scabbard I found suddenly started to glow and transformed into a halberd. And not just any halberd. I don't know what Destiny has in reserve for this relic to reveal itself onto me, especially when others, especially Killian and Sho, have been far more chivalresque about all of this than me, but I hope I can prove myself worthy of it.
progressing through this said area, they encountered another tough encounter in the Grick, which is a stone-like snake that can hide itself in the ground, and the party also had trouble hitting except for Bugger, because Bugger's like, oh, screw you guys, I'm using my plus strength to hit this thing.
Casted a sleeping spell on it so that my partners can actually land their attacks and kill it.
Then they found a pearl, which Bugger then proceeded to touch, as well as the statue that was holding the pearl, which led to the party's toughest encounter so far, 5 shadows.
We then find an altar dedicated to the man who's been whispering to us this entire time. Fought some shadows. I'm glossing over this because I have very little to say. That's kind of important. I get a ring of spell holding that had a celestial in it.
Mostly because of the quantity of enemies that there were. While this was a tough fight, the party showed good teamwork. Bugger was able to finish off a majority of them. Killian Vicious mocked one to death. Joe was able to punch the last one to death. And Millie was able to do damage so the party can finish off whatever shadows were remaining. To which then Joe returned the pearl, and the party was healed by none other than Strahd himself. See, Strahd had his eye on the party, and he was the one who kind of pushed them to go kill whatever creature there was down here. Mostly because I wanted to make Strahd an interesting villain for the party. See, Barovia is his domain, so I wanted him to know exactly what's going on whenever he wants. Because he wants to toy and mess with the party. And one of the party members has a secret connection to Strahd himself, in a weird sort of way. The party was then able to go further down, and this is where they actually avoided a couple of encounters. See, there's a certain hallway that can spawn 4 ghouls if multiple people enter a hallway. But they decided to go one at a time to go find these coffins to bury the children and the adventurer, which they did. They also made sure to not open one of these that had another encounter, which was a swarm of insects. So good on them. So after they buried the children, buried the dead adventurer, they went further down into the secret cult's lair, where they deal with the boss fight of the Death House. So this boss fight was a shambling mound. These things are giant plant-like creatures, which is confusing for this area. You can flavor it to where it's a shambling mound made of flesh and whatnot. I don't know why it's actually a plant monster, but just stick with me here. This is basically the cult's big thing. And instead of doing a sacrifice to this monster to get off scot-free, they decided to humor Strahd by actually attempting to murder this thing. And this is the other hardest fight that the party has. Well, because it's a boss fight, so it has to be kind of difficult for a new party to deal with. See, the Shambling Mount is quite tough, with its high power and pretty solid dexterity and constitution. However, it is dumb as rocks. So using different types of illusion magic, they were able to not only distract it, but also lure it away from party members by using echolocation, as well as spells like Fairy Fire to make it think it was on fire, or one of my personal favorites that Bugger was able to do was use Minor Illusion to make it sound like that the skull was a skipping stone of sorts, allowing the Shambling Mound to be distracted and head towards that noise while the party was able to fly around and do whatever damage they needed. There was a couple hiccups here and there. For example, Sho not knowing that Cindering Strike was a ranged sweeping attack has hit the bard Killian on more than one occasion throughout this dungeon, and this was an exception. Which is ironic because Killian was like, yay, I healed. Damn it, I lost all the healing I just got. Millie was able to use her broom to fly around, thus making Sho think that the broom was useless to more so useful. As well as not only Millie being able to fly away and keep a distance, she was able to help her party members whenever they needed a quick rescue, like Bugger. Due to his size, may have had trouble in the water, but thankfully, Millie was able to get them out as they used the water to try to trap the monster. Typically, this thing is immune to electricity, but me thinking that, it being wet would make it more weakened to electricity because of it being a conduit, they did a lot of damage using the Thunder Wave spell and shocking the creature, which I just thought was very clever. Now, something interesting did happen at the final boss, which did lead to the kill.
Short story is, I shoved Bugger in the monster's ass.
She missed and it went through the rear end of this creature. Though Bugger, with his last bullet, with one of his few bullets in his musket, was able to finish this creature off with a high damage shot as the head exploded and he crawled out of this shambling mound. The party was victorious, but only briefly. As then, all of a sudden, the haunted house comes to life and tries to kill them. But instead of making the party escape, I gave them an ultimatum. Do they trust Strahd and his word? See, Strahd's supposed to be the villain of sorts in this campaign, of a moral gray standpoint. But since the party did what he asked, he offered them a chance to escape a lot easily. The party took it as they escaped the Death House, teleporting out of there and into the outskirts of Barovia, where they met up with Strahd, and Strahd rewarded them in kind. Thus concludes the Death House story.
The vampire Strahd von Zarovich. He gave me most of the answers I wanted. He was the one responsible for the Mist of Barovia and is using it to control the country, blah blah blah. Bugga got some money. Killian got some fancy, I think he got some music notes or whatever. And Sho, he got another reason to be angry, because he's always angry because he's an edgelord, but I can say he's an edgelord because Fireball is very great at playing him. Then we celebrated by taking a rest at the nearest village, at the nearest inn, and that's about where we are now. And then Bugga fucked an orc.
Overall, I think the party had a fun time with this mini adventure, and they did pretty good for some of these encounters. The early encounter, sure, it was rough, but they were learning. But with their teamwork against the shambling mound and the shadows, this gave me hope that the party can do a lot of cool things in this campaign. Thank you folks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this brief little summary of the Death House. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you folks for watching. I will see you all later.